I've decided to make Martyn the Monkey stuffed toy for my son Coleman. Keep watching this video to see how I went, and you'll probably pick up some useful tips and tricks along the way. Right folks, day 2 of working on Martyn the Monkey. I only get limited time to do this each week, so I'm just doing them first thing Friday morning. So this is a couple weeks since I worked on the arms and legs, but today I'm going to try and get just the ears and tail done. See how we go. So I've got 2 bits of soft mesh cut up for my 2 hoopings, and now I'm just going to hoop up the stabilizer. Make sure you loosen the hoop just a little bit. And now we're putting the hoop in, making sure that there's a little bit of extra stabilizer on each side. Now I'm just making sure that stabilizer's nice and taut in the hoop. Now I can tighten it. And I'll just use my pins under here. Remember, when doing machine embroidery, we want to make sure that our stabilizer stays securely in the hoop. So you can do that either with your double-sided tape or doing some pins around the outside. So just every couple of centimeters, I'm putting in a pin. You can put as many in as you like. So to make sure that the stabilizer is nice and secure within the hoop. Okay, so now that I've got my stabilizer in the hoop, I'm going to go over to my machine and start working on the ears, I think. Then you want to load your design onto the machine and select the file that you want to work on, and we're going to start off with the ears. So ears, press embroidery, and it's going to start off with a placement line. Of course, first we'll thread our machine, so making sure you're following the numbered steps. Tie it off, and then press on the thread button. Okay, so we're ready to start. So we'll start the first placement line. Awesome, now we've finished that, we'll take the hoop out of the machine and we're going to place our batting. So batting is optional as well in this design. We've opted to go for it on the ears. Just got to be some batting by 5x3, but remember to check your fabric requirements on the instructions to get your correct length. So what I've done here, I've just placed my batting, making sure that it's even across all of the stitch down line. And it's nice and flat. So just give it a little press with your hands like that. So this should be good to stitch back in the hoop, needle down, and then that stitch. So the goal is always to have no puckering. So I've got this awesome handy little tool called the purple thing, which will help me guide the fabric and save my fingers from getting got by the needle. So this is to help stop puckering and keep all the fabric nice and flat. So you just guide in front of it, and this just holds the fabric nice and taut. Awesome. Hoop out again, and now we are going to trim our fabric. So the trick with trimming your fabric is, of course, very sharp scissors. And at Sweet Pea, we always opt for this double curved embroidery scissor by Ginger. You can find the link for that in the description below. So make sure we're cutting nice and close to the stitch down line, but we are not cutting too close where we're trimming into the stitching. So you can just take your time with this, making sure we get nice and close. And a really good pair of scissors does help with this. And be really careful not to try and avoid cutting the stabilizer underneath, because that would be not ideal. Hope my hand's not blocking you too much there. Awesome, now that we've got our batting trimmed, now we're going to do the placement line for fabric A. So let's stitch that now. Awesome. We've trimmed out our batting. Now we're going to place the outer ear, so fabric A, on top of the placing line. I've pre-cut my fabric to 5 by 3 inches, and I'm really making sure that I place it over the placing line very evenly. So you can take your time with this. I like to line it up here at the start and then move down and then make sure I've got even distance on each side. Make sure that we're ironing our fabrics at all time, and because we really want a nice flat piece of fabric. Needle down, and now again using our purple thing to make sure that we guide the fabric as it gets stitched down, pulling it taut around the corners, trying to avoid any puckering. Awesome. I think there might have been a small error on that stitching. That's okay, that's going to happen. So let me have a look here. Yep, so it looks like the thread broke. I think I might be able to get away with just stitching over that again. Back in the hoop, and I'm going to just re-thread my needle. Back in the hoop, needle down, thread. Now going back a step on my machine, and let's see if we can get this working. Awesome, that's all stitched down. Now we'll move on to the placement lines for the ears. We'll be leaving fabric A in the seams for now. Yep, so everything with the stitching seems good now. I think it just needed a rethread. Awesome, now we're gonna grab the fabric for the inner ear. I've cut this one 4 by 2. So hoop out, lining up the fabric the best we can. Just line it up with that stitch down of the other fabric. And back in the hoop and stitch down. Purple thing, ready to guide that fabric. We'll automatically jump over to the next side. Raise it. Hoop out again, and let's trim that fabric. Turn the brightness up on my camera. Hopefully you guys can see that nice and clear. Grabbing the corner, pulling that fabric nice and taut as I trim. Sometimes you have to be a bit creative with how you move the... I'll just put it on a better angle for myself to trim and for you guys to see. Sometimes you're going to have to move the hoop around to get into those little tight angles. Pulling that fabric tight. Really trying to avoid cutting any of the fabric underneath. I'll just flip this hoop so you guys can see what I'm doing. Pulling that fabric taut. Now just trimming the hairs, making sure it's nice and close. If we leave too much fabric there, sometimes the satin stitch can not cover it all and you'll have your fabric sticking out. So again, using my double curved applique scissors, perfect for getting these little tight cuts. Not as fast as cutting as the other testers here, but been a while since I've been on the machines. All right, so I think that's close enough now. All right, folks, now that we've got that trimmed, the second last step is doing the satin stitch around the inner ears, keeping the thread color light blue to match the outer ear color. And we'll let this stitch. I always love watching the satin stitch work. on the machines. It really is just brings the designs to life. Anyway, we'll come back once the satin stitch is finished. Awesome, that satin stitch looks great. Now we're up to the final step of the in the hoop part, and that is putting the back piece on. So fabric C, and we want to have fabric C wrong side up on the hoop. So that means picture side down, matching the other piece of fabric, making sure that's evenly lined up. And now we're going to do a triple stitch. Okay, this fabric's pulling a bit, so I'm gonna really make sure I use my purple thing here. Awesome, that's all done now. I can take my work out of the hoop and bring it over to my workstation. Back over at my workstation, pins out and take the work out of the hoop. Cool. So popping the hoop out, I'm gonna loosen this a bit. Just gonna use my rotary cutter just to clear away the excess stabilizer. All right, what we're doing now is we're cutting the seam out. So a 1/4 inch around the stitching and then leaving a 1/2 inch at the opening. So I'm just using some fabric tailor scissors and just working my way slowly around the curve. Now I can get my ruler out to get this part exact. So I line up the two ends of the seam and get my rotary cutter and just trim that back to about 1/2 inch. Awesome, so now I've got my two pieces cut out and ready to turn them out now. I lied, we actually have one more step before we turn them out. We've got to make sure that we clip the curves. This just helps for when you're turning out your design. So I'm being really careful here not to trim too close to that seam and cut it. I think I've gone ahead here and trimmed my seam a little bit too narrow, but that's okay. Right, this side's a little bit better now. So just trimming. I'll do the same thing for the other one. All right, so now we want to turn the design the right way out. Sometimes this can be tricky on these little pieces. So make sure you're just taking your time and make sure you're pulling through where you can see both sides of fabric. And you just want to be really careful not to grip your seam. Make sure I'm getting this in shot. So just slowly start pushing it through. Okay. So once I've sort of finger turned it out, I can grab my expert point and press tool. This thing's really great for helping you turn your projects out. We use it all the time here, and it just really gets into those tight parts of the seam and gives that clean, sharp look. So there's two ends to this. There's a really small ball point and a large one. Normally start off with the large one and then work my way to the smaller. So that's looking pretty good now. Now what I want to do is I just sort of, with my fingers, sort of roll the seams to get it nice and sharp. Okay, so there's one ear. As you can see here, I probably could have left a little bit more on the seam, but I think it should be fine. All right, now working the other one. Same thing again, just taking your time. There's no need to rush this and tear the seam. Yep, so once you get that first little turn through, we can grab our expert point and press tool and start working these edges. Get it nice and crisp. Again, now switch to the small side. Now just running your fingers along the edge, rolling the edge. Here are my two ears. All done and ready to add to my project. Really useful tool, and you can find the link for that in the description below. Alrighty, the ears are done. Now I want to start working on my tail. For the tail, you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, both the same measurements, 6x8 for the 6x10 hoop. I've just got my quilting ruler and I've got my Alpha 45mm rotary cutter, and let's just cut the fabric out, nice and simple. There's one. And 2. Make sure when you're cutting, you're really putting your weight down on the ruler, so there's no, so you know the ruler doesn't slip while you're cutting. So there's my 2 pieces of fabric there. I'm going to go out to the sewing room and give them an iron, and then we'll move over onto the machine. Hoop in, once again, some soft mesh stabilizer with some pins around the perimeter to stop any of the movement. This time we don't have a placement line. We're just going to put our fabric A piece right side up on top of the hoop, and making sure that we've centered it and it's equal space around the perimeter. Needle down and stitch. Grabbing my pink thing again to make sure that I'm guiding the fabric. Amazing. The next step is placing fabric B wrong side up on the hoop, making sure that it's lining up with your other piece of fabric. And now we're going to do the single and triple stitch to make the shape of the tail. Foot down and bombs away. Purple thing, making sure that we guide the fabric, pulling it out as it stitches just so there's no bunching up. And now we'll do the triple stitch. All done, only 2 steps, nice and easy. Hoop out, over to my cutting table. Onto the final step of the day, trimming out the tail. Pins out and pop your hoop open. Pop your hoop open, grabbing your fabric or tailor scissors, and we're going to trim a 1/4 inch around that triple stitch and create a 1/4 inch seam. So cutting a 1/4 inch, make sure you're cutting with the curve. Take your time with this. We want to make sure that we don't accidentally trim any of the stitching. We want to get a nice even curve. Cut this excess off. Make it easier to handle. 1/4 inch. Get rid of this excess. Now grab your quilting ruler and cut. Leave 1/2 inch at the opening. Rotary cutter, quick cut. Tail, and then same as the ears, we're going to clip around the curves. Alright, I'll cut to the next part. What I've just done is I've just clipped around all the curved parts, which is just going to help turning out like before. Clip this for a sec. Hang on. Alright, so this one is a little bit more tricky to turn out because it's longer, but just same process as before. Take your time maneuvering it. Try and roll it up to soften the fabric up a little bit and just make it a little bit more malleable. So let's begin. Just slowly start working your way through, pulling little bits out at a time. Many ways to do this. I just like to slow and steady. Slowly birthing it. So try and get a better angle so you can see. Can get a bit bulky here on the curve part, but take your time. So you don't want to pull too hard here because you don't want to rip the seam. I'll fast forward this bit so it goes a bit faster for you. So when you get to this point, you can start to use a pointy implement like this one. So you can start using it to help you push. Sometimes it can be a little time consuming, but it's got to be patient. Almost through. Start using my pointy implement again. Okay. So that's come out pretty good. Just got to get the pointy tip. Amazing. As you can see, this implement really helped. Okay, so now we'll just do what we do with the other one and give it a little roll with our fingers to really sharpen and fold those edges. Very cool. You can give this one a press too to really flatten out those edges. I'll show you how to do that now. Over at my ironing board now. Just again, rolling the edges out with my fingers. Making sure the seams are nice and folded and creased. And then I can use my iron to assist me on that. There you go. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video where I made the ears and tail for Martyn the Monkey stuffed toy that I'm making for my son Coleman. I enjoyed every minute of it. I hope that you found the video entertaining and picked up some useful tips along the way. This is James Makes, and I'll see you next time.